I don't think we have anybody on yet, but this will all be recorded and played back. Um, so today I've got Heresiarch Dari, and we're going to be talking a little bit, casually. It's a casual chat, but we're going to be talking about. Um, so we'll start over, everybody. Welcome to On the Mysteries. I'll be your host, Frater. I'm with my buddy Heresiarch Dari. Today we're talking about Liber Laverna. We're going to touch on some other things as well. Tyranny, the underserved. We're going to be talking about Geber in the Islamic tradition, the heritage that is missing from our Western tradition, and a few other things like modern occultism and some of the issues and problems we have in the community. So these conversations, like I said before, pretty casual. We're just going to chop it up and see what comes of it. Well, welcome aboard, brother. I'm excited to have this space to share your book. I've been reading through it the last couple of nights, and I really love what you put together. Not only from a devotional standpoint, the hymnals, the poetry of it is really beautiful, but at the same time, you have implemented some great practical elements for people who want to get involved with this very little known goddess. So, thanks for joining me. And what can you tell us about yourself to start out? And how did you get involved with this Liber Laverna project in general?
Hi, I'm Heresiarch Dari. I've been doing things in one way or another for like 20 years now. Something like I lost count. I lost count. It's been a long time. As far as Liber Laverna, I spent some time after leaving my family situation when I was really young. I spent a not insignificant amount of time homeless on the streets, in
Hmm.
various parts of the Midwest, including in Chicago for a while, while also doing the magic thing. So I was hitting that gutter punk vibe, that gutter punk mage vibe, and we were just kind of rocking with that. I'm doing a little bit of glam that like I can panhandle. I'm learning a little sleight of hand for like a little bit of cards, a little bit of where can I sneak in and get a sleep, where can I get a food. And eventually, like I don't remember exactly what I was researching, but I came across the name Laverne. And what ended up happening was I went to Google it. I found like one story of Laverna, which is in the book, and then I found something about like the evil villain of a Barbie movie, and I was like, I don't think Barbie is what's reaching out to me. So I tried to dig deeper on the Laverna, and there's nothing. We have one thing. We have one thing from the Aradia, and it's kind of like it's not a primary source. It's sort of a secondary source, sort of a
Right.
tertiary. It's like a quadriary source, right? Because we have Leland who wrote it in Aradia, who learned it from somebody down in Italy, who tells the story of of Virgil telling a story as the Virgil stories go of hearing of this. So we're like, if the plot's here, we're about down here. Like
Uh-huh.
it's no guy who heard this, and it's followed through. And so we get the story of Laverna, and I really vibed with it. It's one of the first things within the book. And I was like, I am living on the streets. I am, homeless. I'm doing the magic. I like a thief, outcast. Like these are my vibes right now. So I started working with her. I did see an incredible change in my fortunes shortly after starting to work with her. And it came about, oh, because that would have been over a decade ago. But about 7-ish years ago, I had kind of a physical, spiritual, and metaphysical issue that I was deeply wrangling with.
Hmm.
Um, and I reached out to Laverna. I'm like, if you can help me, if you can help me cut these ties, if you can help me, get out of some of these things that are causing me. There were, and you and I have talked about, we've got some history on how I feel about oaths. And so there were some oaths that were causing me moral quandaries. I was like, it's very hard to, like, especially within magical oaths that are actually taken in full honesty and full
Mm-hmm.
earnesty, get
Yeah.
out of them. So it's like, Laverna, if you can break these for me, and like release me from these issues, we'll figure something out. She's like, if I do this, you are to write my book. You are to tell my story, and it is to get out. So like 7 years ago, I get the oaths done. I'm feeling a lot freer. The spiritual chains on me, they're gone. I can breathe again. I sit down. I write the name of the book. First thing that pops in my head, Liber Laverna. Everybody writes a Liber. It's just a book. It's the Laverna book.
Right.
I didn't have to think hard about it. I wrote the first paragraph. And then I went to bed because I was tired. And I didn't pick the book up again for about 6 years. I kept telling myself, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll get to it. The whole time she's in my ear, like, you gotta, I'm like, okay, okay. I had a rough spot about 2 years ago where, like, I threw myself into a lot of writing. And a lot of that was
Mm.
Laverna became from one paragraph to like a 50-page thing. I floated it to some people I knew. They loved it and then proceeded for the next year to badger me about it constantly until we got it done. And so, like, all right, we're going to write the whole thing. We're done. Okay, cool. I got hold of my editor, and they were like, okay, in about 2 days, we'll sit down and do this. The day before that, as we were just talking about before, I decided I didn't like the book at all. I had innate problems with the book, so I stayed up all night rewriting the whole thing. And what my problem with the book was that, like you mentioned, there are practical exercises in there,
Mm-hmm.
stuff about how do you learn to double speak, how do you learn to recognize double speak, how do you be less observed, moving
Mm.
about the world. And I was really worried because I was like, considering modern day everything, considering my past, groups I've been involved with, this book is starting to kind of scream diet anarchist cookbook. And that worried me.
I can see that.
When you look in the book, I have laid out what these like sacred acts are, and for only some of them have I given exercises. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't touch lockpicks or anything. Like, there was a lot more that was out because I was like, I'm really worried that this book is going to be viewed as like in that lens. So I had watered the whole tone down, right? It was giving more. You can still see it in the book because in some of the rituals, it's giving kind of like Llewellyn vibes in some spots. It's giving really light, airy. And I realized, like, 2 nights before we were going to do the final edit, that, like, Laverna is the Roman goddess of thieves, outcasts, liars, con men, and small business owners. That's an interesting one that's in there. But, like, there is the big, like, sacred theft thing. And I realized that by watering this book down, I was being stolen from. In the sense that, like, my voice, what my voice actually is, what my connection to her is, how I hold these things sacred
Mm-hmm.
and want to say I was allowing it to be stolen based on what I thought perception of the book would be. So
Okay.
I sat down and I rewrote the whole thing. And it's a much different tone now. There is the call to action in there that I wanted. And so, yeah, it's been a project that's been on and off 7 years, and it's finally culminated.
Mm. Well, it's a nice piece. If you guys, I'll put a link in the replay of this. It's on Amazon. It's in all the major places where you can go and get books these days. I highly recommend it, particularly because it's so um, poignant and potent for our time, for things that are happening right now. Now, if you could just give the audience a little bit of a dossier, if you will, on Laverna. As you said, there's not much that we know. What are you outlining in the book that you could condense for us here for people who are interested, right? Goddess of Thieves is cool. Goddess of, you said small business. Give us your rundown of how she shows up for you and what it means to really be involved with Laverna in a modern day sense with everything that's going on in our world.
So thieves is a big one for her. Like that's kind of like you'll find that everywhere. It's the Roman goddess of thieves. But the reason it's the Roman goddess of thieves is very important. In the tale we have of Laverna, at the end when she's in the council with the gods, Jove says a very poignant line to me. And I think while the rest of the story tells how Laverna is, there's this one line that tells what she is. And
Okay.
I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it off the top of my head, but here we have a wandering goddess claimed by none, but even even the devils have Satan as a master to call. Heretofore you will be the goddess of those who have no one to claim. Those caught in scofflaw, the thieves, those caught in viente, like those people that don't have a god, those people that are outcast from society, those who won't be spoken to, who won't be trusted, who are having to spend their life punching up, right? If there's
Mm-hmm.
not God to claim you, if there is not a people to claim you, then that is what Laverna encompasses. So it does encompass thieves. But at this point, we're also, thieves and con men, sure. But when we talk about outcasts, when we talk about people who don't have a home, when we talk about trans people, we talk about the LGBT community as an entire whole, we talk about, people from broken families, we talk about people who have left institutionalized religion and are now kind of outcasts, especially in small towns where, like, you break from the church in a small farm town, that's everybody's business. You're kind of on
Right.
your own. Laverna comes. Like, these people who feel they have no one to have their back, the gutter punks, the train kids, the hobos. I talk about in here a little bit about hobo code and like things that were going on with that, like African Americans during segregation and the secret movements and orders there when we talk about the rules of Laverna. And so all if you're outcast, if you're ostracized, if you're unwanted, then like Laverna calls to you. And
Okay.
it's a subtle thing. It's like there's that movie, and I really should remember the name of this movie because it is always something I bring up when I talk about Laverna. It was a Will Smith movie where he's like an expert con man thief, and like the one younger girl tries to rip him off, and then he ends up like catching the play, catching the con, and then she's like enamored with him. And there's this scene when he finally is like, hustle, is it hustle?
I
It
think
might
so.
be,
Yeah.
where he's talking with her by the fountain, and he's like, and if I lean forward like this, then that happened. If I like touch your wrist here, then that means this happened. And all these subtle things. It's like that scene, but on a very like spiritual and emotional level. It's very like she's talking to you not in what you're seeing, but in what's missing after the conversation.
Gotcha. Interesting. And like I said before, really apropos for the current time. There are a lot of displaced people, and that seems to be growing, especially when we're talking about the underserved or the invisible people of the world. And so I think it's a timely release, and hopefully, you can get it into the hands of those it would help the most. Um, which is of course a great challenge in and of itself. Kind of like a hey, steal my book off the shelf sort of situation.
It's one of those things that has been discussed in my circles where they're like, Dari, are you going to, like, there's a copyright in there because there has to be a copyright. But they're like, are you doing a PDF? I'm like, I'm not doing a PDF. Not because I don't think people need a PDF, but because if you can get this book out of somewhere for free, if you can lift this from somewhere, then that's sacred theft. That is you reclaiming something that is meant to be yours.
Almost like an initiation if you manage to do it.
Yes, but I'm not making a PDF because I'm not going to make it easy on you to do. So, like, the work has to be put in for the change to start.
Hang on one second, brother. I got my kid screaming at me, so just 1 second.
Absolutely. I've been seeing messages. I'm too far to read from them. Maybe I'll take a look and see what's been said. Oh, just people joining, da 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 da. I don't know how any of this Substack works. I thought I saw messages. Nope. We're gonna unveil.
It was a con. It must be Laverna moving. So 2-year-old con. Um, so here we are talking about Laverna, talking about the underserved, and that kind of leads us into one of the other pieces we wanted to talk about today when we were talking about how we wanted to introduce some of the other topics, including we've kind of touched on tyranny and oppression, and this is kind of a bridge topic for us in kind of talking about another piece, which is that of Geber, the Islamic wonder, and how much the Western esoteric circles of today are just impoverished when it comes to understanding their own history, where things come from. Um, it's pretty easy to say we wouldn't have half of the things we have in esoteric circles in the West. You know, the West that we're talking about is Germany, France, England, and beyond. We wouldn't have half the things that we have today without the Islamic world preserving a lot of it. And you know, people are all over the place on the spectrum of what's going on in the world when it comes to oppression. But I think it is again apropos that we're talking about it in the context of Laverna and how we have been kind of stolen from, if you will, by history and by academia, and saying that all of these things come from Trithemius or Agrippa, so on and so forth, when there's clear evidence historically that that's not necessarily the case. And I know you're really passionate about the topic, so I'd like you to kind of riff on it.
All right. So we're going to start with the content. First off, I'm still very upset with the results of that poll. I'm very upset with it. But all of that came about because I was recently, I can name drop the festival, right? Yeah. I recently attended Babylon Rise, and some of my circle, some of my people, we gave presentations. One of my friends, my editor, in fact, was giving a presentation on what Goetia actually is. Wonderful presentation. But they had me like proofread it, see if anything was missing. And what happened was, as they're going through their slides, they're going through the timeline, they hit the Dark Ages, and like they had a slide in there where like we don't really know what was going on. I'm like, respect the fuck up, because listen here, like what happened with the Dark Ages, right, is that Rome couldn't keep itself together. Rome was very bad at this. The Germanic people, they came in, and Western Rome, what we see now in Europe, could not withstand that. So they fell. They had no way to communicate with the Germanic people. So, like, the language communication, yeah, that was all broke down. There is a thing. But, like, the Eastern Roman Empire, or what we,
Hmm.
call the Byzantine Empire, was kind of flourishing, was kind of like recording and copying every book it could get on, like, math, science, religion, spirituality, magic. Like, the Byzantine Empire went full librarian mode. And in the meantime, while that's going on, when it's the Dark Ages and we don't know what's going on, I pointed out to my editor that, like, that is the exact time of the Islamic Golden Age. And if we're talking in magic, if we're talking in, like, what's going on with magic at this time, you can't talk about it without Geber,
Hmm.
without the Jabirian compilations, right? And so, like, we set up that poll. I'm like, you need to understand, Geber is the foundation. It is the foundation. We don't have occultism today without it. We really don't.
Yeah.
And so we had that poll, where it's like, who was more important, Agrippa or Geber? And, like, everyone says Agrippa. I even got into it at Babylon Rising about this after a presentation. And I love the person to death. They're wonderful. They're an amazing, but there was one of the people I talked to, they said a specific thing. And I'm like, this encompasses the whole thing. And that the reason Agrippa is considered more foundational to Western esotericism than Geber is that people have heard of Agrippa, but not heard of Geber. And I think that
Hmm.
speaks is that, first off, Islamophobia has been a huge thing in Western Europe historically for a while. That's,
Yeah.
that history is what history is. That's just, call a spade a spade. But Geber's work, it's very interesting because a lot of it was alchemy. A lot of it was beginning chemistry. It was literally alchemy. Like, that was an important thing. He wrote tons on that. Okay, so it was either Geber writing a lot, or it was 7 or 8 people using the name Geber. We won't dismiss that this could have been a group project. But
Well,
Geber is
and it's one guy among many in the Islamic world that are writing on these subjects. Like, I mean, we have what you could say in Western Europe, we have a couple hundred texts that are preserving some of these. In the Islamic world, we have hundreds of thousands. Like, that is the difference, and it is a PR thing. It is marketing. It is the fact that academia from the 18th century on basically said these group of people, they're animistic, they're not intelligent, so on and so forth, and they blackballed them from the conversation. And that's really what this boils down to. Is it is historicide of a high order, where you're essentially saying this entire 1,000 years, ish, of this time period where a group of people had put together such massive amounts of thought, of conceptualizing, of innovating as well.
Mhm.
These topics from late antiquity on were just not a part of the discourse, and that's why you have like that poll where Agrippa's more important. Like,
and it's a shame because, like, with Geber and chemistry, this is what becomes out. This is what, like, becomes alchemy. There's a lot with astronomy and astrology there. There's a
hmm.
lot of science, a lot of science to the world of Islam at the time. Science was spiritual. That
Hmm.
was a deeply held thing.
It's all mixed.
These writings weren't missing spiritual depth. And what ends up happening is, like, what Geber talks a lot about, like, experimenting in scientific study and, like, doing, like, essentially the scientific method not only on the substances of the chemistry and the alchemy you're using, but in the spiritual and magical side, where it's like you need peer review, you need critical analysis, you need other people, you need things to not be UPG, right? And that, for the timeline of magic that we have, sitting there and saying that is something we find foundational in the chaos magic of the 60s and 70s. It takes us that long to get back and sit down and say, mathematically, scientifically, let's quantify the magic we're doing. Geber said it centuries ago. He said, he's
Yeah.
like, your physical stuff, you got to experiment right. But that also means your spiritual stuff. You got to make sure you know what you're doing. And
Hmm.
it's been written off. It's something that, if you are into the Western occultism, looking at the Jabiriani compilation, even just skimming it, I'm not expecting anyone to read all 100-something books, but
Right.
skimming some of them is going to level up what you're doing so much. It's going to open up how you're viewing this in like insane ways.
Well, yeah, it's a. I mean, mostly what people are operating through is an extremely narrow historical lens. It's coming mostly from England. I mean, even in Western esotericism, particularly here in the States, there is an impoverished body of work. It's all English. Anything that's English and Hermetic Dawn, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. There's hardly anything from France, although in recent years we're getting more and more translations of great stuff coming out of France and Germany as well. That's entering into public discourse, which is really nice. But beyond that English wave of, you know, uh, late 19th century, early 20th century lodge magic, beyond that, you have a little bit of medieval and a little bit of Renaissance magic. And that is the scope of Western esotericism, which in many ways has left out uh, anything Orphic, anything Greco Egyptian. And the list could go on to PGM
Well,
and many other
yeah,
materials.
like, so first off, I do want to circle back to like you were saying about the French and German translation. Some of the most solid stuff I need for my research that's been written on is German. There are two places I go to if I want to find solid research on occultism now. I look
Hmm.
for that are in German that are translated that I'm gonna have to go bug somebody to translate, or I'm looking at stuff that's coming out of the Czech Republic. Like,
Okay.
Prague studies on magic are a league of their own. I don't know if there's anything currently out there that can hold a candle. I go in academia all the time, right? And when I see something in the magic and the occultism and it's from the University of Prague or something like that, I'm like, that. I need that right now because I know how solid it's going to be. And even that is kind of like, it's pushed to the corner, it's a little demonized in it. As far as the Orphic and the PGM, we are seeing a bit of a resurgence. We do
Hmm.
have um all the great names. I want to shout out some of them, but then I feel like others will be mad they weren't shouted out. But like the work with Jake Stratton Kent, the Geosophia, all it's beautiful. It's everything we're missing. Everything we're missing, we're finally seeing it in a lot of the older grimoire authors now. Like Jake's doing great stuff. The stuff that comes from Sarah Iles Johnson's wonderful. Allison, like all of them. If I could name every one of you right now, I would, but that's not what we're doing here. No, you are all loved and appreciated for the amazing revival. It's not, and that's the thing. A lot of it's not even reconstruction. There is some, but it's also revival. It's just like the text said this, and we can do this, and this is what it looks like, and this is what happened when I did it. And that was just being discussed earlier on the thing about bring it all back in. Who's doing Catabasis anymore? And it's like yes, we need to be. It's 2025, okay? The world's been around a long time. We've been writing on magic a long time. And we sit in a spot. This is our decadence. We're going to get into the ducks now, if that's
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, no, I
We,
think it's time.
it's time. This is where we sit in the information age where so much can be found, can be sent out, can be like wrote about. And because of it, we're really diamond in the roughing with this. Because, like, there's so much out there in modern occultism, in postmodern occultism, because let's call it what it is. The Western occult sphere is postmodern now.
Yeah.
Hang on, I've got it. He's actually up right now. You can come play. Get some. All right, us. All good. Kids wanting to play with other kids.
See,
So
see, occultists have kids, children, or everybody. It's it's part of the.
okay, cool. I'm in the middle of something, so thank you so much. Okay, I'll give it to you.
We live real lives, folks.
We do. I hate to break it to you. We're all not living in the woods, studying, just poring over books and doing nothing. We're out here. But yes, so we live in an age of what can only be called postmodern occultism. And that term, because this is what has got me in trouble, I guess, is like when I say occultism is now postmodern. The idea in postmodern art and in postmodern architecture and especially philosophy was a lot of rejection of. It was a response to the Enlightenment age, which was highly religious and highly traditionalized.
Mhm.
So postmodernism kind of said we don't need the religion, we don't need the tradition, these systems and everything, we can reject these and live after all this, which has merit. There's a lot that has merit to it, you know. But when we apply this to magic, we really look at like the 60s and 70s chaos magic that was going on and going downstream from that. Now we're in a spot where like it feels like anybody can say anything, and because anybody can have UPG, it must be true and you cannot attack it. Like where religion was the sacred cow, right? The church, the Bible, the scripture, this was a sacred cow. The laws of the land were the sacred cow. Now UPG is the sacred cow. If you go and you point something out, it is not welcome to be pointed out that these things might be incorrect or that somebody's working off bad knowledge or that somebody wanted to make a couple $1,000s at Hot Topic and so they just wrote something. And when you point it out, it doesn't seem to go well anymore. It seems like UPG more sacred than we hold the sacred. And it's something that I view as a problem. It is a decadence. Agrippa! We want to talk about, okay, Mr. Agrippa occult. Agrippa wrote himself about this way back in the day. Because his whole thing was we need to go back and look at, where we came from. Which is what I say, but I'm not as well received as Agrippa. But Agrippa says magic, and this paraphrase. I wrote it somewhere, I don't have it now. But in the first book of occult philosophy, magic with all its trappings and all its everything, like he talks about, it has a tendency to get into the practitioner's imagination, to pull him away from the source and from the mysticism, and that there was a level of decadence there he tried to correct. We're at that again. To quote Jake again, sorry, Jake's just, Western occultism is not in good shape. It just has a flourishing market. And that's like the crux of where we are, right? Anybody can get a book published. I'm a no-name nobody. I got a book published. Nobody stopped me. I just said, Amazon, I want to write a book. And Amazon was like, can we take 40%? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, you can have a book. And now I'm a published author. And like, that's a thing you expect from people. And it's like, anybody can do that. Literally anybody can go write anything. And the discernment seems to not be there in a lot of places. And I get the wanting to reject from religion. I get the religious trauma. I get the hate of institutions. Look around. Like I get it. But we can't go so far away from that backbone or not on the same like continent anymore. And
Right.
that is just it's not it's ducks everywhere. It's ducks everywhere. It looks like a duck and it quacks like it's a duck. Like it's not something. And it's not like I'm sitting here saying I have an answer to this. I don't. My answer is I scream into the void until people are like, get out of our space. And I'm like, okay. Like, I don't have an answer. I'm not the genius who's going to solve this. But it is something I feel like we need to talk about.
Well, I think it should always be open in conversation. I think when we shut people down who challenge us on our takes, then we develop echo chambers and we develop an inability to face criticism. And ultimately, I think we're out of balance, probably because there is a technological element that allows us the opportunity to say whatever we want, and not necessarily honor tradition. Now, I mean, there's two ways, and I think seeing a lot of both. Honestly, on one end, we have over innovation, and on the other hand, we have really rigid traditional structures and people adhering to those that are pushing back. But the divide between the two has never been so far. Well, maybe not never, but we're seeing it as a chasm right now, and you need to have balance. You can't have rigid tradition only. That's how traditions die. It's exactly how they die, and you can't have innovation of all things without a consideration of how that fits into the superstructure of the system you're working in. And that is a major challenge that we all face, particularly in the commodification of spirituality, the materialism of it, the fact that we're sitting on here on a platform that has a brand, right? Like that's that's part and parcel of the magic, and I'm really thankful for that. And I think it's a really beautiful thing that we have the opportunity to share these conversations, but we have to have them, right? We can't just put them in a closet and say you can't challenge whatever somebody else says. Uh, I see you do a fair bit of the challenging. For me personally, I'm more than happy to let somebody have their space, but I don't always
Look,
have to converse with them either. Like my friend, need to learn to pick and choose your battles. That's
okay, see, my problem is that every battle we've briefly touched on this. Every battle is worth fighting because every person I get it. I get it. You want to sit here and you want to do a thing. Ultimately magic, and it's going to sound stuffy and traditional. Ultimately magic is doing something to connect you to God, to elevate your soul, to enlighten you, to bring you
yeah.
to your potential. If you're fucking around for a decade eating flowers because that's glamour magic, how much of your life did you just waste not being at your potential? And in this world with the underserved and with the tyrannical, we need everybody at potential. We need to save
No,
everybody
that's
we
fair.
can. So every battle is worth fighting.
Sure. I can agree with that. I think that you're not going to win everyone, and
Oh, I'm
the
10 and 200, 10 and 200. Yeah, yeah.
the battle you really have to win is the battle for yourself. And if everybody does that, then it becomes a lot less of external force from someone else on somebody else's ideas. Leading by example rather than by the mouth, I think, is probably the most uh, effective way of transmitting what this is all about, is showing that how that operates in your life, being truthful, authentic, and honest about these things. is one of the better ways to do that. And I think it'll circle back. This thing goes in cycles, right? The flourishing of all of this right now, this revival, all of the extra material being proffered out into the digital sphere will come back down to earth. It will get cycled through and chopped up, and what's valuable will shine, and what's not valuable will be largely lost. But the proliferation of that information is really interesting. It'll be interesting to see in our lifetime how it crystallizes into what will be transmitted into future generations, because that's how it goes through. And in times specifically of societal tribulation, of trial, it crystallizes, and we're in one of those, right? So we've seen a proliferation over the last 30 years, let's say. What's going to happen as things close off with that proliferation is a crystallization, a codification of what this generation has added to the long-standing tradition of magic. And I think it'll be interesting to see what we have added.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, I'm constantly saying the kids are all right. I've been in some of the servers where there's there's newer people on the path, and like, I don't like a lot of fluff. I like, things can be,
Yeah.
that scientific, but some of the things that these people are coming up with and these innovations, they are wonderful. Like, I've been blown away by some stuff I've seen, right? Like, there's especially, so within chaos magic, there is the idea of, to get your sigil out there, there's the idea of the glamour bomb, with the glitter and the egg and the sigil. And that was a thing for a long time until we had an innovation where people are like, can we talk about how harmful glitter is to the environment, and can we do this a different? I'm like, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that we can have that conversation. The way people approach wards and banishing and protection. There's a lot of new things out there that people are like, technically. I'm like, you're very right there, and I love that idea. And so there is a lot of good innovation. It's
Mm-hmm.
just out.
Yeah. And I think it's also a process of youth. Um, Youth it clamors for innovation, and I think as we age, that tends to change, and you see that in the growth of people as they age. So it'll come back to where it needs to. Nature has her ways of correcting our inability to correct ourselves.
And I get it. It is a thing of youth. We all did graffiti. We all drag race. I get it. I get it. You
I didn't
gotta
do
get
those things, bro.
what it's not too late. It's not too late. Like, I get it. Rebellion is so important to the spirit, but we do, like you said, we got to come back at some point. If it's just that for the rest, you burn out, and it just
Yeah. Yeah, rebellion should eventually, I just used the naughty word, should. Rebellion often transmits or transmutes into service of society. And I think the rebel never really goes away. It just realizes new ways of being in the world, and how you can be sacredly rebellious without the all of the loudness that youth brings to the fore. And I think that it's just a part of growing up, man. It's a part of growing up and finding out who you are and where you fit. And it is all about where you fit in the magic community, right? What's your niche? What's your what's your topic, bro?
yeah. And sometimes you just get a niche or a topic, nobody's involved in, so you kind of sit there quietly in the corner. You twiddle your thumb,
Are
like,
you talking about Mesopotamia? Because it's time.
it was on the list, and you brought up like niches. Like, yeah, okay. I'm like, was this the Brit? You just sit there, you twiddle your
It's
thumb.
the bridge.
You're like, oh, hey, you said, I don't even know. Oh, it's the alien stuff again. Okay, bye. Like, look, it's very hard having a niche that has been filled with conspiracy theories. It's like, it's hard. It's so old. This is what context. This is my thing. For the last decade, Mesopotamian priests studying Mesopotamia, writing these things, living this thing. I like to say, like, I'm a Midwesterner, live physically and mentally, I'm in the Middle East. Because, like, that's so much of my life now. And it's an interesting thing to be in. And it's rife with, like, the decadence, it's rife with that. But it's, I don't know, I'm not even sure where you want me to go here with this. I'm not sure where I want to go with it. But, like, we had that discussion, and I had that post about doing something as old as this. So much of the fun stuff of, like, the occult, it's not there. You know, we're not
Mm-hmm.
talking the meditations and the chakras and the wardings and this and that, and there's no kenosis, there's no communing with the. And it's just like, you have a thing, do the thing, and in that way, it's very simple. It's a very complex religion. There's thousands of gods, but in that way, it's very simple. It's very simple. It's like magic. The reason we have magic, it is approved by the gods for us to do in order to help the community. There are
Mm-hmm.
plagues. Make plagues go away. Talk to the gods about changing someone's ruling in their life. Get rid of the
Yeah.
sick. Heal the cattle. Like, the ox gotta be, like, fields gotta be plowed, ox gotta be fed. Sometimes you need magic for that.
Right. Yeah. And with so little material, it is hard to operate. But I think that it goes back to what we were talking about with the narrow approach that we have in Western esotericism when you try to move to something as deep in antiquity as Sumerian religion, Mesopotamian religion, whatever you want to, whichever term you prefer. The same things don't always apply. Like, magic is magic. The mechanics are kind of the same, but you don't need to produce a, a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram for Sumerian, right? Because that's a comfortable skin for you. I guess you could do that if that's like a transition for you. But I mean, that was a challenge for me too, working through the Egyptian book of Coming Forth by Day. I was like, well, where's the magic? Where's the ritual? So much of this is simply spoken. It's just
Hmm.
spoken, and I really struggled with that. I was like, well, that's it. That's all I'm doing is recitation. And then it kind of clicked. Took me a few days. Took me probably about 2 weeks and a 60-day write that it clicked for me. This is the magic. The simplicity of it is the magic, right? The theology, the cosmology, all of that is very complex, but the actual production or theater of the magic is much more simple. And I feel you there. I feel you there in some things. Like you go to, we were just talking about it today. The Orphic hymns, where we have people now layering on extra rites on there, and it's all right there. It's all right there in the hymns. Say the hymn, and you did it. Like, burn the incense, say the hymn, recite the hymn with vigor. Is
I've had
that
many,
is the magic?
I've had many people. They're like, Dari, it's the same. It's the same question over and over, right? Because of the world we live in. I'm having trouble getting a job. My finances are a mess. I need a better job. I need a job. I need a new job. Do you have anything? Like, I don't have money to do anything. I'm like, boy, do I have something. Go do an Orphic hymn to Saturn. What do I do for that? Pull up the Orphic hymn. There's one that rhymes and there's one that doesn't rhyme. Pick your poison there, whichever you prefer. Say it and light a candle. No, there's got to be more. Like, no.
Yeah, there's
Say
got to
it,
be more.
say it, mean it, light a candle, and that's the whole thing. And I talked about this in one of my speeches at the Babylon Rising, with, like, my model of theistic operative force. Like, the act of speaking to the gods, or the act of allowing, because we see it a lot in the Mesopotamia stuff, where, like, it is not my words, but the words of insert God,
Hmm.
where the God speaks through, like, that's it. And you can see there's a through line with this. You were talking about, like, the Egyptian, the coming
Yep, there's a lot of that
Davidic.
in there too,
Oh,
and the pyramid
like,
text.
when you what is the big thing? What was the thing that was said, that was spoken into creation? Literally, who? Hu. That's it. That was the power that brought forth all creation, was the speaking of it. And you see it all over the place. Like, from my limited knowledge of Eastern stuff, like, mantras are like, yeah, just speak. Speak and mean it and say it until you mean it. And that is the magic. We create. We create.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Christianity, what was with God in the beginning?
The
Logos.
word.
That's it. You speak it out. And at the end of the day, that's what you need. You need to be saying something you mean in a space that is sacred to allow your words to be sacred. And that's what everything boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it all, speak the sacred word, you know?
Yeah, we've all seen too many movies. That's the problem. Seen too many movies and watched too much anime to understand that it is really that simple, and that's how our ancestors have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. Is the more simple, and as I get older, that's what is really attractive to me about ritual in general, is the simplicity of it, and how people have taken things that were massively like ritualized things and broken them down into folk practices that are practical and functional and help us get through life, because that's the point. It's to help us live life with a little bit more ease so that we can have the experiences that we need to elevate spiritually. It's not necessarily always about getting a new car, unless you really need one. Unless you really need one.
And like,
And in this world, you kind of do.
to kind of complete the circle, we were talking about, we are in postmodern occults. What's more postmodern than throwing away all the trappings and just speaking to your faith or your deity or your source and being like, I don't need all this. Here I am. An interesting Mesopotamia fact. We were briefly talking about it before, about why I couldn't do this in my room. The priest, when they went to go speak to the god, because the god lived in the statue, the priest was clean, was well groomed, and was completely naked. Like, you entered the sacred chamber with nothing. You bared yourself to the god, and you said, Enki, Asaluhi, Shamash, whoever, this is what is occurring, this is what I am asking, and this is what I'm wanting and speaking. There's nothing. There's no lights, there's no candles, there's no LBRP, no chanting. It's you naked before your God. And what's more postmodern than there being nothing but the connection?
Oh man. Well, we've touched on a lot of things, and I think that's probably a great place to end it. I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me. It's been fun. I'll have to have you on again, because I think we play off each other pretty well, and these conversations are never over. The
Right.
discourse needs to keep going, and more of us need to talk with newer heads, because the old heads won't be around forever. And it's one of the reasons I started producing the way that I have. Is as I get older, that's part of
Mm-hmm.
my contribution to it. I can't sit and read books and write to Word doc for the rest of my life. Eventually, what I've been tinkering with has to come out, and a lot more of us need to have these conversations with each other as the generations pass on. It's part of our responsibility to the craft itself, to society, and to keep these things going. So, thank you, brother.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful.
All right. Thanks, everybody. This will post later, maybe next week. And then, Dari, you can post it on yours as well. That's the cool
Absolutely.
part about Substack, the decadence of Substack.
Yeah.
Oh,